working and sleeping in the mud and dust, even eating wild berries. But now, as more information comes out about the chemicals used to clear this military base of vegetation, some of these veterans are angry that our government may have exposed them to Agent Orange.
When a forest burns, all you see is just sticks. That's basically what you see. There's just nothing around there.
Matthew Masnick remembers Gagetown well. He was an Army Reserves captain based at Fort Devens when his unit traveled to the Canadian military base in 1985.
We got that one for Canada.
Even though the base is deep in the New Brunswick woods, the troops noticed something unusual right away.
My first sergeant actually took me for a tour, and he showed me, he goes, look at all the dead areas. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And he goes, that's Agent Orange.
Agent Orange, the toxic defoliant known mostly for its use in Vietnam. It was sprayed from boats and airplanes to kill the vegetation used by the Viet Cong for cover. Veterans exposed to it still suffer higher rates of cancer and other diseases. But Agent Orange's deadly legacy was far from the minds of the reservists in Canada.
I don't think anybody thought about what was around us. We were just there to do the job.
Masnick didn't think much either about the rash that appeared on his face a few months after his Gagetown deployment. But his concern grew when he was diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 48.
It's almost like a rash. And
his health problems continue to grow.
Do you wonder if these health problems are because of Gagetown?
I'm convinced that Gagetown attributed to it. The government that I worked for knew this stuff before we went there.
What do you think should happen now?
Well, they need to do something at least to get the people checked out.
You're worried about the long-term impact?
I have no clue.
Masnick is not alone. Drawn by Gagetown's massive size, Allied troops from all over the world trained there, and so did more than 5,000 Massachusetts National Guard soldiers who deployed there for 2 weeks in 1988.
That's me when I was first went in.
Ralph Berardi made a career out of the Army and Army Reserves. In 1987, he was sent to Gagetown for a 3-day scouting mission for the reserves. He also remembers large portions of the base emptied of trees and vegetation.
You would drive around the corner and there'd be wide open areas where there was nothing was growing. It was just empty.
Now retired and living in Clinton, Berardi has faced 3 bouts of cancer. He wonders whether his time at Gagetown caused it.
Do you think it was irresponsible to send people up there?
I don't think it was the right thing to do. You don't send people to areas that are contaminated.
The Canadian government says only small amounts of Agent Orange were sprayed in 1966 and 1967. A recent Defense Department report concluded that most people who lived or worked at Canadian Forces Base Gagetown were not at risk for long-term health effects from the herbicides applied there.
We cut it, we ingested the fumes, we burned it, therefore we inhaled the smoke.
But Canadian veterans and even their widows have been battling their government for years, saying the truth about herbicides at the base has yet to come out. In a lawsuit, veterans and their families say Agent Orange was sprayed more often than the 2 years the government admits to, exposing people at the base to the defoliant's deadliest component, dioxin.
There were a number of conditions that are considered to be associated with dioxin exposure. These include a number of cancers.
John Stegeman is a toxicologist at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. He's chaired Institute of Medicine committees examining the effects of Agent Orange on Vietnam veterans. We showed him some of the records about herbicide use at Gagetown.
From my looking at the material available, there are a lot of questions that are unanswered. Who was exposed to what, where, and when?
One man who wants to know is Richard Pelletier. The Framingham resident is a former Marine and Maine National Guardsman who also trained at Gagetown.
People were eating blueberries and strawberries, and there was even ponds. People swam in ponds. Even people fished. We thought the place was safe.
Pelletier believes that Gagetown was not safe, but he's had little luck getting the government to pay attention.
I feel very angry. I feel very angry that people don't know. We need to know who did it, why they did it, and why we weren't told.
The Massachusetts National Guard declined our request for an interview, but gave us a statement saying the Massachusetts National Guard takes very seriously the safety and well-being of both present soldiers and airmen and our veterans. The statement adds that it is unknown if Massachusetts National Guard soldiers or airmen were present at the exact location and time of spraying. The U.S. Veterans Administration says that any American soldier who participated in Agent Orange spraying at Gagetown during 1966 or 1967 and has a disease linked to the herbicide will receive a disability benefit, but the VA says additional claims will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Senator John Kerry has asked the Department of Defense to look into the Gagetown soldiers' concerns. Mark and Maria?
So, Mike, we know Agent Orange was sprayed at Gagetown back in the 1960s, but how dangerous could it be for the soldiers there in the 1980s?
Well, a lot of that depends on how much was used and where those soldiers were. But there were also much larger amounts, millions of liters, of something called Agent White that was used. Now, that's not as deadly as Agent Orange, but it had a toxic chemical that carries its own health risks. The VA has encouraged anyone who served at Gagetown to file a disability claim, but to win, a veteran will have to prove he or she was exposed, which might be difficult concerning how much little information there is about U.S. training at the base.